Good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America in Washington, and this is Live Talk. I am Kip Stube.
And I'm Marvelous Mplanganya Huye, broadcasting from my home in Washington, D.C. because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about COVID-19 and World Press Freedom Day.
And MISA says the new information law is a progressive step towards fostering citizens' rights to access information.
Yes, and before we get there, Marvelous, we know that there are roughly about 430,000 people that have actually been vaccinated for the first time in Zimbabwe. And there are about 94,131 people who have been vaccinated for the second time. So meaning that there is a low number of people that are actually getting their second dose of COVID-19. And then when we look at Zimbabwe in general, there are almost 39,000 people that contracted COVID-19 since March last year. And out of this number, 35,634 people have actually recovered, and 1,570 have died. And yesterday, there were 2 recorded deaths, according to the Ministry of Health, and there were 21 new cases, indications that this is coming up in terms of numbers, because maybe it's cold or scientifically we may not have a term for it. So go ahead, Marvelous.
And as you just rightfully said, that the COVID-19 pandemic is still with us. And here in America, we've seen that the number of deaths have surpassed 500,000, which means 500,000. But we had great news from President Joe Biden of the United States, who said last week that America has managed to vaccinate over 200 million people, surpassing his own target of 100 million people in his first 100 days in office. So that's good news coming from here in the United States. But like we said, tonight we are going to be concentrating on World Press Freedom Day. This year's theme in Zimbabwe is information as a public good, in pursuit of Section 62 on access to information of the Constitution of Zimbabwe.
And the theme, Marvelous, is crafted against the background of the 1991 Windhoek Declaration, which stresses that an independent and pluralistic press is crucial in information dissemination.
The Windhoek Declaration encourages African governments to provide constitutional guarantees to freedom of the press and association.
Where is Zimbabwe today in terms of press freedom? According to MISA Zimbabwe, the country's 2013 constitution explicitly says there is crucial information that is being framed by the constitution to say people can access that information. There is freedom of expression and media freedom, among other progressive provisions under its Bill of Rights.
And the country enacted the Freedom of Information Act in 2020 in place of the widely discredited Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, APA, which during that time was attributed to Professor Jonathan Moyo of ZANU-PF at that time, who was the information minister.
MISA also says the new information law is a progressive step towards fostering citizens' rights to access to information.
And MISA further recommendable developments include the licensing of the country's first ever community radio stations and private commercial television stations, as well as campus stations, as well as radio stations at Great Zimbabwe University, Midland State University, University of Zimbabwe, Lupano State University, National University of Science and Technology, and Harare Polytechnic College. So those have been said to be progressive moves.
MISA is, however, concerned that these progressive steps risk being marred by some clawback provisions in some of the laws that are before or have since been passed by Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
It further says one such law is the Cybersecurity and Data Protection Bill. MISA says the bill is strong on surveillance of citizens and weak on balancing cybersecurity with the enjoyment of fundamental rights such as free expression online and other issues. Yebo kambe zulukanti balinjani lapha likhona endaweni zonke zomhlaba esijiyeneyo. Namhlanje ke sixoxa ngakhonokho ke okwenzakala eZimbabwe. Nxa sikhangela i-COVID-19 siyabona ukuthi ichaya sibili okunye okumangalisayo emhlabeni wonke jikelele. Nxa sikhangela khonokho kwethulwa ke luhlangothi lwezempilakahle eZimbabwe luthi kukhanya ngani kulabantu sebesedlula i-430,000 asebehlatshwe okwakuqala ijekiseni zokuvimba ukumemetheka kwe-COVID-19. Luyaphinda njalo ukuthi kulabantu abayi-94,131 asebehlatshwe okwesibili amajekiseni atshiyeneyo. Siyakwazi ukuthi eZimbabwe kusetshenziswa amajekiseni ambalwa. Bese kusithi izolo kulabantu ababili ababulewe yi-COVID-19 kodwa abayi-21 batholakala ke belomkhuhlane lo. So ngani khonapho ke kuyahlupha kancane. Nxa sikhangela njalo ukuthi eZimbabwe kusukela ngesikhathi kuqhamuka umkhuhlane sokulabantu 38,281 asebahlolwa batholakala bele COVID-19 kwathi abayi-35,634 ngabantu asebaphepha kumkhuhlane lo, kuthi ke abayi-1,570 marvelous ngabantu asebabulawa yi-COVID-19. So kunjalo.
Aiwa, kunavo vachangobva kupinda pachirongwa chedu tinokuchingamidzai nemufaro nhasi musi wemuvhuro zuva rechitatu mumwedzi waMei. Pano pachirongwa chedu paLivetalk chatinokupai tiri muWashington DC pamusoro pedenda reCovid-19. Pari zvino denda iri reCovid-19 munyika bazi rezveutano rinoti iro pane vanhu 38,281 vakawanikwa ivo vachibatwa nedenda iri, zvichisanganisirawo vamwe vakabatwa nedenda iri kubva ratanga muna March gore rapfuura kusvika iye zvino riri pa35,634. Uyezve vamwewo vakabatwa neCovid-19 vakawanikwa ivo vachitadza kukunda chirwere ichi vakashaya varivo pa1,570. Saka tinotenda kuti pane vamwe vakabatwa nedenda iri vakakwanisa kurikunda vataurwa ivavo nebazi rezveutano kuti vari pa35,634. Tozotarisa zvakare kuti nhomba yeCovid-19 iri kuwanikwa iyo itori pakati pekubayiwa pari zvino, uyezve tinoona kuti pari zvino pane vari muphase 2. Hurumende iri kuti iyo vari pasi pebazi rezveutano vari kuti ivo pane vanhu 430,068 vabatwa vawanikwa ivo vachibayiwa nhomba yeCovid-19. Saka ndozvimwe zvatichange tiri kutarisa, tichitarisa zvakare kuti nhasi izuva revatori venhau rinonzi iro Press Freedom Day, rinotarisa iro mabatirwo ari kuitwa vatori venhau pasi rose. Takatarisawo munyika yeZimbabwe kuti zviri kufamba sei pari zvino. Tichiona kuti munguva yapfuura taiona vamwe vatori venhau vachishungurudzwa uyezve vachiendeswa kumatare nezvimwe zvakadaro. Saka tinotarisa isu kuti sangano remisa ranga riri kuwanikwa iro tichitaurawo kuti pane zvimwewo zvakagonewa nehurumende payakagadzirisa mubumbiro remutemo mabatirwo anenge achiitwa zvekutepfenyura nhau. Vakataura ivo kuti pari zvino pane macommunity radio station uyezve nezvimwe zviteshi zviri pazvikoro zvikuru munyika yeZimbabwe zvavanoti izvo aiwa iri idanho rakanaka rakatorwa. Asi vakazoshora zvakare ivo vemisa kuti pane vamwewo zvakare hurumende haisi kukwanisa kunge iri kubata vatori venhau zvakanaka, uyezve vakataura ivo kuti tinoona vatori venhau vachimbunyikidzwa mukuita mabasa avo pasi pemimwe mitemo iri munyika iri kunge ichifanira kunge kuti iyo iwanikwe ichirandudzwa. Gibbs.
Yes, marvelous. Njengakhona akuveka ukuthi namhlanje ke i-World Press Freedom Day lolusuku ukuthi phela kukhangela ukuthi kambe kwethulwa kwembiko kuhamba njani kwele Zimbabwe emhlabeni wonke jikelele. Siyakhumbula ukuthi ke kule into okuthiwa i-Windhoek Declaration eka-1991 iyakubeka sobala sibili ukuthi amazwe kuzwekazi le-Afrika kumele bebone ukuthi ke nxa abantu bethapha indaba bathapha indaba ngokukhululeka okunye okumangalisayo, njalo kumele ukuthi kube lemsakazo eminingi kanye lamaphephandaba lokunye okutshiyeneyo. So lo nyaka ke i-theme yokuthi kunanzwa lolu suku ithiwa ke information as a public good in pursuit of section 62 on access to information of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Khonapho bathi hayi phela ukuthi uthaphe indaba into eqakathekileyo kakhulu. So ngakho ke kumele kuvuleke kumele kuvuleke. Siyabona ukuthi i-team le ilungiswe khonapha bekhangele i-1991 Windhoek Declaration ekubeka sobala sibili ukuthi nxa ukuthi information ithapheka kamnandi kwenza ukuthi phela kusebenzeke so konke khonokho kungani izinto ezifunwa nguzulu. So singakhangela njalo-ke siyabona ukuthi-ke khonapha-ke nxa sukhangelwe i-Windhoek declaration kuyakhanya ukuthi vele kwakudingakala ukuthi kube lokuvuleka sibili kwezindaba lokunye okutshiyeneyo. Imisa Zimbabwe ithi eZimbabwe kukhona osokwenzakele kodwa kukhona okunye ongazange kwenzakale. We are happy that we've got Mr. John Masuku. I talked to him before this show, and here is what he said about World Press Freedom Day.
What is important is that we carry out self-introspection. We look at how we are performing as media, which is something that we look at in our everyday life. But this particular day is set aside so that we go deeper into analyzing how we work as media and what improvements we can make. So that's what makes the day special. And in terms of freedoms, we are still yearning for more freedoms. We want to be freer as media. We don't want people following on people who are just doing their work professionally. Of course, there's been a proliferation of fake news all over, and that we condemn. We don't want our practice of journalism to be tainted by fake news. We want to be honest reporters, honest broadcasters, honest writers, and so forth. So these are the things that we try to promote on this day, which is given to us through UNESCO, to talk about how to build more professionalism, how to ensure that information is treated fairly to everyone, because the theme is to do with information as a public good. So you don't want to pass false information, you don't want to pass half-baked information, but you want to pass honest information. And you are not pleasing a particular individual, but you are pleasing mankind by being honest and truthful in your reporting. So as journalists, that's what we stand for, and that's what we urge all our fellow journalists, even the youngsters who are coming up, to be honest, to be professional, to make sure that all the two sides to the coin are brought into the story and not to take sides.
Give us your fair assessment of media laws in Zimbabwe, just a fair assessment.
Well, as a legal person, I would just say there's still room for improvement. There is no need to have any laws that hinder the freedoms to gather information, and also we don't expect public authorities to hide information. So these laws should ensure that journalists and all those seeking information are protected, so that we get the best information as we can for our different products in programming and news writing.
As a journalist, how difficult or how easy is it to actually write news in Zimbabwe?
I think by and large, journalists are writing news. There's a lot of news coming from Zimbabwe, but of course, there's also a lot of fake news. And unfortunately, in some cases, when journalists don't get response from government, they end up maybe adding some hearsay, and then those public officials only come up when the news has been distributed, with some fake news or without their input. But by and large, I think people are writing stories. People are writing for Zimbabwean media as well as international media here and there. When half-baked information is published, well, people have gotten into trouble. Unfortunately, there isn't much we are doing in terms of fighting corruption through journalism. We need more investigative journalism. I'm glad that it is being promoted at the moment, and so that we unearth some of the unfair practices, some of the things that are really milking our economy. We really need to play our part as journalists. But what we urge each other is to make sure that we publish accurate, correct information. Let's use different ways and means to get accurate information, to get all sides to the coin, so that when we publish, people will believe in us, and that will end up leading to a change or maybe a reduction or even an obliteration of corrupt tendencies that have really milked our country economically, politically, and otherwise.
So now you are saying you can write news without anyone knocking on your door to say, you know what, Mr. Masuku, what you are writing about is not likable. You are saying a lot about the government, and please shut up. There's nothing like that, right?
No, I wouldn't say there's nothing like that, but it's not an everyday occurrence. Here and there, something will come up that someone has written a story and the government or ruling party are not happy about it. And unfortunately for us journalists, at times we fall short because indeed we'll have not checked certain facts, we'll have not verified with the right people and so forth. But what I was saying to you is that by and large, stories are being written left, right, and center in local and international press. And at times, the government does complain, especially with stories that come from private media like Newsday and so forth. But I want to believe that they continue to write, and where they really feel that something is wrong in their writing, they do apologize. But we're glad that they are unearthing a lot of things that may not be unearthed by public media. That is very, very important. But as we do that, let's do it professionally. Let's make sure that we dig into the facts and, like what others are already doing, like Newshawks and so forth, and give background information so that people really make informed choices. People will make informed choices if the media is giving them all the information, all the background, all the profile. We need that so that we tell the truth about what's going on. But from what you are asking, I'm saying on a day-to-day basis, no one is knocking to say, don't write this, don't write that. But there are some reactions that do take place indeed when government or ruling party in particular, or even business people are not happy about how stories have been angled in some circumstances. Because your question might sound as if you cannot even go out to gather news. No, you can actually go out and gather news, and you may go on, but be careful that anytime, if you go into some of these hot things, yes, your fingers will be bent. And if you're on the right side, you'll stand by your story and say, this is what I found, this is the fact on the ground. Your editors and your publishers will do that. But yes, you are able to go out and gather news.
Yes, marvelous. That's John Masuku. He's actually expressing his own opinion. He's a veteran broadcaster there. Quiet. Marvelous.
Aiwa, apo tanga tiri kunzwa zviri kufungwawo nevamwe vagara mubasa irori rekutepfenyura kwenhau vachitaura ivo mafungiro avo kuti mazuva ano tinoona pane iya inonzi fake news kana kuti nhau dzinenge dzichipepetwa zvisiri izvo, asi tinodziona dziri padande mutande, vanhu vachishandisa mumawhatsapp group nezvimwe zvakadaro. Izvozvo izvo ndo zvimwe zviri kukanganisa zuva irori ratiri kutaura ratingati press freedom day, kuti vamwe vanenge vari kunyora nhau dzechokwadi vachikwanisa kunge vachiita zvinenge zvakadzidziswa mubasa irori rekupepeta nhau, mazuva ano vari kusanganidza nhau vachikwikwidzana nevamwewo vanongo vachiitawo mabasa ekufunga kuti vanopepeta nhau, asi vachizowanikwa ivo vachiendesa zvinhu zvakadai senhau dzisiri dzemachokwadi. Aiwa, ndinofara ndiri kuona mukoma vakwanisa kupinda muchirongwa. Ndozotiranga riri birthday renyu nezuro. Happy birthday. Asi hatisi kukunzwa, itaurisai.
Thank you very much. It's marvelous. Thank you.
You recently came from Zimbabwe, from Masvingo. What would you say or comment nepanyaya iyoyi yeInternational Press Freedom Day? Tinoona zvizhinji zviri kutaurwa pamusoro pekumpunyikidzwa kwevanopepeta nhau, uyezve nevamwewo vanoita zvematongerwo enyika nezvimwe. Zvakamira sei semaonero enyu?
Chekutanga ndinoti vapepeti venhau nevatori venhau havachisina iya yatinoti freedom, especially muno munyika yeZimbabwe kana kuti muAfrica as a whole. Muchaona kuti even pakaitika anything chaitika anywhere, vatori venhau munoona vachirobwa, munoona vachisungwa nemapurisa, munoona vachitorwa makamera avo, vachishungurudzirwa basa ravo ravanofanira kunge vachiita. Saka iyaya yatinoti freedom ndo yavasisina. Kuda kana pavanenge vaonawo mukana kuti kuda vachereza kafreedom kavanenge vavana kukashomera kwavo, muchaona kuti havasi kukwanisa kuzviita. Why? Because mabasa avo makazhinji, mamedia house mazhinji ava nemasides atinoti mapato vanenge vachitsigira kana kuti maindividuals avanotsigira. So vatori venhau havasisina that freedom. Havakuitwa yatiti pachino kugagging yekuti kana kuti whipping yekunzi munonzi musatora nhau dzakati tora dzakati, usatora nhau dzakati tora dzakati. Ukaenda kuZBC, ukaenda kuSunday Mail, ukaenda kuChronicle, mapepa ose anorwangwa nestate, muchaona kuti vatori venhau havasi kunyora zvinhu nemazvo vakasununguka, nokuti vanenge vachitya kuzonzi ko madarirei izvi maitirei izvi. Saka nokudaro that freedom havasisina. Even ukaenda kuna ma-independent media houses, uchaona kuti maybe kuda mukuru wavo kuda unenge ari ZANU-PF kana kuti maybe ari aligned neMDC. At the end of the day, vatori venhau, ma-editors enhau, they cannot even exercise their freedom because vanoita zvekuudzirwa kuti izvi hatizvidi mubepa redu, izvi ndo zvatinoda. So that freedom is lacking. Ndo panozobuda nhau yatinogwana mukoma mva kutaura kuti dzimwe nhau zhinji dzava dzenhema, dzava dzamanyepo. Why? Because vari kuitira kuti vana vakutambisa mari vafare, vamwevo vachiitira kuti mapepa avo atengwe, asi nhau dzedu zhinji dziri dzemazvokwadi.
Saka pamira pakadaro tinoona kana imo muno muAmerica panga paine mutungamiri weAmerica anga ari muno vaDonald Trump, vakagara vachitaura kuti vatori venhau vanonyora nhau dzisiri dzemachokwadi, zvimwe zvanga zvakutopinda muvanhu vachingofunga kuti mabasa ese anoitwa nevatori venhau mamwe zvavanonyora ndezvekunyepa. Tingaone zvichizosanduka here? Takatarisa imo muno muAmerica kana nekuZimbabwe kwamataura kuti vazhinji vanenge vachinyora vakarerekera kumapato avanowanikwa ivo vachiteedzera kana kuti vachitsigira, kana kuti vanenge vada kungonyora kuti vawanikwe ivo vachitengesa kuti mari ipinde mukambani.
Ndoda kutanga neishu yekuno kuAmerica. Dambudziko rakaitika pana vaTrump nderekuti pavaiti mapepa vatori venhau vanonyepa vairifeya kumedia house imwe chete, at the same time vachikurudzira kuti imwe ndeyechokwadi nekuti yainyora zvavaida. That's the biggest challenge we have in this world. Kana media house inotaura zvaunoda ndo inotaura zvemazviro kwazvo, inotaura zvausingadi inonzi inonyepa. So at the end of the day, unenge muchiwedzera that division within the media fraternity, and therefore the media fraternity will be divided into two, and each house allied itself kumunhu waanofanira kuti uyu ndiye anotaura zviri positive kwaari, uyu anotaura zviri negative kwaari hatimudi. So that statement on its own, to me, it was so divisive zvokuti my media houses aizopedzisira ose amwe ava aligned kuna vaTrump, amwe ava aligned with the opposite side. So the same thing is cascading down to African media houses. It's cascading down to African media houses. So that spirit ikaramba yakadaro handisi kuona dambudziko richipera anytime soon.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kukura. Stay on the line. We're coming back to you shortly. So we further discuss this issue with John Masu. Listen to what he says about media freedom and other things in Zimbabwe in Ndebele.
Lusuku oluqakathekileyo kakhulu kuntatheli zindaba kanye lakubabali bezindaba lababukeli ukuthi sibonisane ngokuthi kambe kuyini okungalungisiswa ukuze ukuhamba kwezindaba endaweni ezitshiyeneyo kuhambe kuhle, kungabi lezinto eziphicayo, kungabi lokuxabana lokunye okunjalo. Kodwa konke lokhu kumele sikwenze nsuku zonke lanxa leli langa liqakathekile ukuthi sijule kikho.
Sengathi nxa sikhangela khona eZimbabwe khona okuthiwa i-press freedom kume njani?
Hayi, kwesinye isikhathi kuyabe kulungile, kodwa kwesinye isikhathi bangavuka belele ngomhlubulo abadala kungathi kuyajika. Ngakho-ke kuyasebenzeka khona dube, kodwa ngokokunanzelela ikakhulu nxa kuyikuthi ukhuluma iqiniso ngezinto ezenzakalayo, ngoba kwesinye isikhathi ulakho ukunyikinywa ukuthi okunjena lokhu lalokhu kungani ukukhuluma.
So ngasithi sikhangela sibili ungumasuku unje uyenelisa yini ukuthi uthaphe indaba ungadingwa ngomunye umuntu ukuthi ubuthaphani la?
Angenelisa sengilesikhathi eside ngithapha indaba vele kangiyemukule emuva ngizenzela nje ngikhululekile lesikhathini lapha nesasihlukuluzwa khona kangizange ngitshedele emuva ngapho ngokuqhubeka nginjalo. Ngithemba laba ababefuna ukuthi bazingele baze bejayela labo. Ngakho-ke hayi mina emsebenzini wami konke engulobayo konke engikwenzayo engikukhulumayo empilweni yami lokufihla igama lami azange ngilifihle emsebenzini wami ngenxa yokuthi umsebenzi wami engawukhethayo njalo engingasoze ngiwusebenze ngizifihlile.
Abanye-ke abathapha indaba kambe bangabe bekhululeke njengomasuku?
Bakhona abakhululekileyo sibili njalo bakhona engihlala bakhuthaza abaphongwesaba umnyama ongelampisi. Yebo kwesinye isikhathi kulokuhlukuluza ukukhona hatshi isikhathi sonke. Okunye njalo okwenza ukuthi abanye besabe bakhona esibabonayo ababefuna nje ukuphumisa yonke into, okunye kungamanga, okunye kungaqediswa kuhle. Khonokho kwenza ukuthi ugcine usudinga. Kodwa nxa ungumuntu olandela zonke izinqumo leziqondiso zokuthapha indaba eseqinisweni, nxa kuyikuthi kumele ukhulume labantu abatshiyeneyo ukhuluma lenxa zonke zabantu hatshi ukukhetha ukuthi ngizakhuluma lalabo kuphela abanye ngibatshiye lanxa bonke besedabeni, konke khonokho kuyakudingisa ngabezomthetho ngoba uyakukhulume ngecele linye kwesinye isikhathi uqamba amanga unganikanga abanye ithuba lokuthi bakhulume iqiniso.
Khonapho-ke imithetho-ke ayibophi abantu ukuthi basebenze. Siyakhumbula ukuthi kwakule IPA yasulwa kodwa-ke ithe isesulwa khonapho kwakungeniswa okunye ukuthi abanye bathi kunuka santungwane.
Eminye imithetho yona le eyokwenqabela abantu ukuthi basebenze bekhululekile ilokhu ikhona njalo inhlanganiso zethu thina njengentatheli zindaba ezifanana labomisa o-VMCZ lezinye nje ziyaphatheka ekuthini ilungisiswe ngoba kungenzeka ukuthi kwedlula iminyaka emibili emithathu leyo mthetho ingasetshenziswanga, kodwa-ke kwelinye ilanga baza kuyivumbulula nxa kukhona abafuna ukuthi bakuzingele ngakho. Ngakho-ke ayibe imithetho ekhululekileyo enza ukuthi intatheli zindaba zisebenze zikhululekile, zisebenza ngolwazi olupheleleyo njengoba zafundela esikolweni kanye lemsebenzini. Ikhona sibili imithetho Dube, kodwa thina kunhlanganiso zethu ezitshiyeneyo siyahlangana sibonisana ukuthi ingesulwa njani ukuze ibe yimithetho engayisiyo yokuzingela abantu, kodwa ibe yimithetho yokwenza ukuthi kube lo mthetho, kube lobuntu, kube lembeko nxa kuthathwa indaba.
Kodwa ngokubona kwakho sibili nxa sikhumbula babomasuku kudala sibili waqalisa ukuthapha indaba. Usathapha indaba usesengumfana lokuthapha indaba manje kuyini ongathi kungumgoqo ukuthi ugcina uthapha indaba ngemfanelo kulezi nsuku?
Sekulezinto eziningi Dube ezenza ukuthi amanga asabalale njengoba kade sisikhuluma nje kalula ku-social media. Umuntu munye ngamunye usengumsakazi. Ngingakhumbula khonapha nje ukuthi ngifuna ukutshela umhlaba wonke ukuthi uDube welongofili emzingwane lijahe elingalunganga kuyatshona sokugcwele umhlaba wonke. Abantu sebekuthatha njengomuntu ogangileyo ngenxa lokho ngiyabe ngilobile ngakufaka ku-Twitter ngakufaka ku-Facebook, kugcine okunye khona kuthathwa lazi inhlanganiso ezinkulu ezezindaba. Sekutshiyene ngesikhathi sethu kwakule misakazo yayisakaza ku-FM, ama-WhatsApp, o-Twitter, o-Instagram bonke babengekho ukusabalalisa amanga asesabalaliswa kakhulu kulezi nsuku. Njalo abantu ngenxa yokuthi kule misakazo eminingi kulokuncintisana okuthile ukwenzela ukuthi balalelwe bazuze imali lokunye okutshiyeneyo. Abanye bagcina sebesebenza ngendlela leyana engaqondanga ukwenzela ukuthi bahuge abantu abaningi ukuze babalalele kumbe bababukele. Khonokho lakho akulunganga. Sebenzisa nje indlela ozaziyo ezokuthapha indaba, abantu bakuthandele iqiniso, abantu bakuthandele inhlelo ezimnandi, abantu bakuthandele ukuloba okumnandi okuphumisa iqiniso elipheleleyo.
Yes, marvelous. That's John Masuku, the veteran journalist. What he's saying is, in Zimbabwe, of course, when we talk of press freedom. There are so many issues that we can talk about there, but at the end of the day, somehow there are some people who can gather news without any problems, but there are some who can't. When they're doing so, there are so many challenges. So he says, but at the end of the day, there's an element of self-censorship at times. He says people fear the unknown, but at the end of the day, he says, when there's nobody knocking on your door to say, hey, Marvelous, you're writing the wrong thing here, it's good for you, but in some cases, it happens. So he says people must not believe that Zimbabwe has got this kind of, unlimited freedom in which you can actually write news. And he advises, journalists to fairly balance their stories. He says that's key and fundamental in news reporting. So he says in these days of fake news, it's dangerous just to be picking things from all over the show, because at the end of the day, you may end up circulating fake news. And he says some journalists are actually fond of, just grabbing things and publishing them without verifying the sources of information. So he says in that kind of scenario, then you get into trouble, really, big trouble.
Aiwapo tiri kunzwa zvanga zviri kutaurwa navamasuku vanga vachitaura ivo pamusoro pekuti zvakakosha kuti kana munhu achinyora iye nhau vanyore ivo vasina divi ravakarerekera yavanoti ivo balance. Asi vari kuti mazuva ano zvimwe zviri kuitika ndezvekuti vatori venhau vanonyora asi vamwe vachinyora vachitya, kunyange pasina vanhu vari kuvatyisidzira. Vanenge vakutozvitarisira kuti upenyu hwako hunogona kuenda pasina kumira zvakanaka. Uyezve vanga vari kutaura ivo kuti mazuva ano zvakare kune matandemutande akawanda akadai seTwitter, vana Facebook ivava, vana zvakawanda-wanda, Instagram nezvimwezvo. Saka vanhu vari kungotora nhau kwavanenge vadziona pasina kunyatsoferefetwa kuti nhau idzi ndedzechokwadi here kana kuti kwete. Saka ndo zvimwe zvavari kutaura kuti zviri kusanganikwa nazvo iwo mazuva ano panyaya yekuferefeta nhau kana kuti kutorwa kwenhau uku. Gibbs.
Yes, we've apparently lost Mr. Kurawan. I think he's trying to log in. So let's hear more from John Masuku, concerning other issues, press freedom and other matters. Sengikhuluma ngemisakazo eziningi eZimbabwe. Siyabona ukuthi sokuleminye imisakazo etshiyeneyo. Kodwa konokho ke ukuthi kunikwa abanye abanikwanga, wena kukubamba njani khona?
Akulunganga, kuyakhanya ngoba uzafica ukuthi le esilayo khathesi imisakazo ikakhulu le okuthiwa izimele yodwa ngayizimelanga yodwa, imisakazo ephansi kwenhlanganiso zikahulumende. Ngiyakhumbula thina umsakazo wethu we-Radio VOP ngesikhathi si-aplya sazama sibili ngendlela zonke ukuthi sifake amaphepha nokukhuluma ngendlela emnandi esuthisa labo abasilalelayo, kodwa hayi akulalapho esafika khona labanye bethu esa-aplya labo, kodwa bagcina sebethola lezo ncwadi. Siyabona ukuthi izinhlanganiso eziphansi kukahulumende ezezimpapers kwaphinda kwathola lelinye ijaha elalilunga lephalamende lebandla elibusayo, bonke laba bazimele bodwa sibili labanye abazama ngemva kwethu hayi abakatholi. Ngibona sizabona khathesi ukuthi kule imisakazo evulwayo bakhona yini abazathola la kule ematelevision eyaphumayo. Abanye abasiki bebunda angakudingisisi, kodwa abasiki bebunda bathi ezinye inhlanganiso ziphansi kwamasotsha, ziphansi kwezinye inhlanganiso zikahulumende, kodwa zinamabizo achiyeneyo. Konke lokho kumele kudingisiswe kubonakala ukuthi kambe kuliqiniso yini, ngoba singathi thina sesile misakazo emitsha kanti-ke yonke imisakazo kahulumende kumbe ebandla elibusayo kodwa kucatshwe ngabanye abantu. Ngasikhululekeni nje sibe le misakazo abantu bonke nje abafisa ukuthi babe lemisebenzi yokusakaza, hatshi ukuthi kudingakala ukuthi umuntu wakhona aze asekele ibandla elibusayo, aze abe umuntu osekela kakhulu uhulumende. Ngabe ngumuntu weZimbabwe olandela imithetho yeZimbabwe, ongasiyo sigangi, ongasiyo umuntu owephula imithetho, umuntu othi nxa uyiwe emapholiseni akula lutho, akula sici ngaye, othi nxa kuyiwa ngaphi uyabe ngumuntu nje okhululekileyo weZimbabwe. Akumela ukuthi ube umuntu okhululekileyo ngobungane kuphela lokudlala labantu abakuhulumende kumbe abebandla elibusayo, ngoba ngumuntu okhululekileyo othanda iZimbabwe yakhe, lanxa ungela abangane kuhulumende, lanxa ungela abangane kubandla elibusayo, kodwa ungumuntu othanda ilizwe lakhe. And ukuthanda ilizwe lakho akutsho ukuthi uhambe weyami ngokuthi ngenxa ukuthi ngile card lenhlanganiso ngenxa yokuthi ngisekela abantu kuhulumende ngibona ngathi ngomunye umkhuhlane oswasingenayo lapha eZimbabwe ngenxa umuntu ehlangana lawe sokubuza ukuthi wazana lobani kuhulumende wazana lobani kubadlela ukusa sekwandile sembona labantwana abancane sebekufunda khonokho beswela ukuthi bangakhululeka bazimele bodwa kodwa bengabantu abathanda lokuvikela ilizwe labo.
Singathi-ke uhulumende ungani wesabani ukuthi kube le misakazo eminingi ekhululekileyo ekamasuku uzimele wedwa kwesetshwani lapha?
Kulabantu nje abangathandi iqiniso abathanda nje ukuthi lanxa beye ngabanye abantu kuphonga uchiwa kunjalo kodwa-ke ungabuya-ke umsakazo kamasuku lo utshoyo utsho ukuthi hhayi yilokhu elikuzwileyo lanxa kuphume kumsakazo kahulumende kumbe umsakazo osekelwa libandla kumbe eminye imsakazo kwesinye isikhathi phela okwamanga lokhu ayisikho kahulumende lamabandla abusayo kuphela okunye kwenziwa ngabeza amabhizimusi ngenxa yokuthi kukhona abayabe kudinga. Nxa sikhuluma ngokukhululeka kwezindaba Dube sikhuluma ngezinto ezihlanganisa uhulumende ezihlanganisa abantu makhaza ezihlanganisa amankampani azimele wodwa ukuthi amanga akukhathalekile ukuthi akhulunywa ngubani kawalunganga asibe ngabantu abakhuluma iqiniso. Ngakho-ke abantu nxa bengafuni ukuthi bakhuluma iqiniso kanengi wena ungazama ukuveza iqiniso elipheleleyo balakho ukuthi bangakuthakazeleli.
Now, let's talk about the registration of new players, in terms of broadcasters and so forth. So how is the environment now?
Well, the environment is not yet there, because while we have diversity, so many names, new names that were not there decades ago, but we're not plural as yet, because most of the names that make it are those that are associated with the ruling authorities and so forth. We want a situation whereby every member of the public who is capable of running a newspaper organization or a broadcasting organization is given that opportunity, not because they are friends with the minister, not because they support the ruling party or government and so forth, but because they are loyal Zimbabweans who abide by the Zimbabwean laws. That is very, very important, that abiding by the Zimbabwean laws, loyalty to the constitution of Zimbabwe and so forth may happen even if you are not a member of the ruling party, even if you are not a member of government and so forth, because there's a notion which is unfortunately also creeping into our young generation that you can only be a patriot, or even people believing that when you talk about patriotism, you're talking about being a member of the ruling party. Or no, but you can be a patriot when you are not a member of the ruling party, when you are not a member of government, but you are a patriot because you observe and abide by the laws of Zimbabwe that have been agreed. We've said that even some of the bad laws, as long as they are there and they have not been repealed, you have to abide by them and fight in the background to have them changed. But until they are changed, they are there and you may be affected by them.
And finally, this is the era of fake news and everyone is a journalist, literally. So how do you navigate as a newsman, How do you navigate and say, this is news, this is fake, this is, how do you do that briefly?
You can check. There are so many ways of checking. You check with the people concerned who are in that story. And also, fake news is usually poorly written. The sourcing, the naming of sources, and already by the time you get to paragraph 2, if you are a real professional journalist, you can start raising your eyebrows, you can start raising your questions about the authenticity of a story and so forth. And also, if you also are well informed, well read, and you know what's happening, you know that this and that are not adding up. Let me check. You don't just rush to publish. Unfortunately, some renowned, well-established publications have published facts that they get from fake news, which means that their editors will not have checked simply because so-and-so's name has been mentioned. So we should also use some of the tips that we're getting from organizations such as ZimFact about how to check for fake news. Is very, very important. I really commend what my colleague Chris Chinaka and company have been doing, going around journalism schools and newsrooms and so forth, sharing their ideas about how we can avoid fake news, giving them some steps of checking stories, especially those breaking stories as they come in. I mean, we're all guilty of that. I just saw a WhatsApp which says Zimbabwe schools examinations results for O levels have come out. And I think the first one I really shared without checking everything. But I said, no, maybe I'll check later. I'm not sure about the site that is distributed it. But I was only sending to my family how to have published that. But later on, when I saw it being a government institution, ZIMSEC being a government institution, when I saw it coming from the Herald Online and ZBC News Online, I said, I think there's an element
It's
of
authentic.
truth there.
Yeah.
It's authentic, yeah. So that gave me comfort. But otherwise, the first ones that I sent to my family, I wasn't that comfortable because I wasn't too sure about the site that had first distributed. Last week, actually, after the A-level results, I think the following day, on a Saturday, there was fake news that already the O-level results were out. But that one, the fake news was very poorly written, and you could tell from the first paragraph that this is fake.
Mr. Masuku, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for the in-depth analysis of every issue that we posed to you. Your last word, sir.
Thank you very much. I wish all the journalists the best in the World Press Freedom Day. I'm very proud to be saying that to you because you remember, Tube, in 2013, I was the recipient of the World Press Freedom Award. I'm just polishing my trophy in order for me to take a nice picture and send a message to my fellow journalists to make sure that we remain professional, we remain honest, and we remain law-abiding citizens, but who tell the truth as it should be told.
Now, John Masuku here is talking about press freedom and, the aspect of fake news.
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, there's a crisis here. Everybody is a journalist. Everyone that you see today is a journalist. Unlike the olden times when he was, a young journalist and so forth. So he says, now you can have people actually scooping you from their houses. So at the end of the day, you must know what you're writing about. He says
that is very true.
He actually picked up some story, concerning O levels. Read the story and said last week, it seems like this is fake news. Because he says the only thing that showed him that it was fake news, it was the way it was written, because you can easily tell when you're a newsman, you can easily tell this is
no
not,
attribution.
you see?
No W's.
So it was just hanging, So he says, under those circumstances, you cannot have such things being published. So it becomes a big challenge.
His sentiments are shared by a lot of people because right now, people that actually read blogs and that are on social media platforms, sometimes they don't really understand the way that we as journalists actually, that we do get trained. We know exactly that, there are certain rules that you have to follow. There are ethics that you have to follow. So sometimes, because they're so used to seeing everybody who thinks they're now a journalist because maybe they picked up a story that they thought was juicy and passed it along on social media. But if you are a journalist and you have a trained eye, you can tell, like what Mr. Masuku just said, that no, this one, I think it's fake news. There is no background. There is no attribution. There's a lot of, holes in the story. But to a layman, they will just think it's juicy and will pass it along. And that's how a lot of people end up being misinformed about certain issues, especially COVID-19. You know that we have done a lot of live programs on other platforms like Let's Talk and your Zimbabwe Today. And when people come on there, they will say, I saw on WhatsApp that COVID-19 vaccine causes you to do this and this and this. But it's not verified information. It's not information coming from, medical people. It's just news that has been circulated amongst people that is not verified. So, in this time of COVID-19, I think that's where we're seeing a lot of fake news being circulated around, like what Mr. Masuku was saying over there. kune avo vari kupa chirongwa parizvino tanga tiri kunzwa kubva kuna vaJohn Masuku vari kutaura ivo kuti panguva ino yatiri kurarama munhu wese anozviona kunge ave mupepeti wenhau, nekuti kana uine foni uchingokwanisa kuona zviri kuitika panze apo unogona kutotaura kuti ndo zviri kuitika kunoku kana zvakadaro nezvakadaro. Asi vati ivo vane ziso rekuona kuti zvinenge zvanyorwa izvi zvinenge zviri zvechokwadi here kana kuti kwete, nekuti kazhinji kacho mabasa atinoita aya ekutora nhau tinotoenda kuchikoro totonodzidziswa kuti zvinofambiswa sei, zvizvo unofanira kutarisa pakunyora yatingati iye nhoroondo yezvinenge zvaitika, uyezve wawana here kuenzanisa nyaya iyi kuti kana uri kutaura tomboti nevanoita zvematongerwo enyika wawana izwi remapato vanopikisa here nebato riri kutonga kuitira kuti ukwanise kuwana iye yatinoti balance, uyezve wabvunza mibvunzo inoenderana here kuti munhu akaverenga anonyatsonzwa kuti zvakaitika kupi rini sei. Kune maW atinowanikwa isusu tichidzidziswa kuti aya ndo aunowanikwa uchishandisa mukubvunza mibvunzo nezvimwewo. Saka ndo zvavanga vari kutaura ipo pano kuti mazuva ano uyezve pazuva rino pasi rose riri kurangarira zuva revatapi venhau, chanyanyonetsa inyaya yenhau dzenhema, nokuti tinoona panguva ino yeCovid-19 pane zvizhinji zvinotaurwa pamusoro yatingati yanhomba yeCovid-19 yataona vazhinji vachiwanikwa ivo vachizengurira kuti vaende kunobayiwa nezvinhu zvavanenge vaona zvinenge zvatumirwa kana kungave kuri kumawhatsapp group kana kutwitter kana kupi kufacebook ikoko kana kuinstagram nevamwewo vanenge vangonyora asi zvisina unyanzvi. Saka ndo zvavanga vari kutaura kuti ndo zvatiri kuona mazuva ano kuti vanonyora vawanda, asi kuti zvavanenge vanyora izvi zvinenge zviri zvechokwadi here kana kuti kwete ndo nyaya inonyanyonetsa pari zvino, nekuti vazhinji vanenge vakuverenga tinoona kuti vazhinji vanowanizofarira dzimwe nhau dzinenge dzine chekuita fanike mazuva anaya nhau dzinenge dzine chekuita nezvavanoti juicy zviya, asi kana paine nhau chaidzo dzatingati idzo dzinenge dzine chekuita nezviri kunyatsoitika vazhinji vanowanikwa ivo mazuva ano sekuona kwatinoita havazowanikwa vachiteedza nhau idzi. Tinoona vachimhanyira kuti vanonzwa zvinenge zviri zvemakuhwa nguva zhinji, ndo zvatinoona vazhinji vachimhanyira kuenda kwazviri, asi munguva yakawanda zvinenge zvisina uchokwadi mukati. Saka panguva ino yePress Freedom Day ndo zvatiri kutarisa izvozvi kuti zvinokwanisika here kuti tichidzokera panguva iye apo taiona vatori venhau vachipiwa ruremekedzo nemabasa avanoita, kwete kuti tingomirira kuti tizonzwa zvinhu zviri zvinhu zviri kubva izvo kumadande mutande anenge achitaura zvemanyepo.
Now we're joined by Mr. Vusani Musontini. He's based here in USA. Mr. Ntini, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dube. That marvelous.
Yes, tell us on the microphone. So we're talking about World Press Freedom Day. Is as an American citizen now and a Zimbabwean at the same time, what do you think about press freedom?
I think press freedom to me means that you can say whatever you want with no consequences after that. Which I think, when you look at Zimbabwe and then you look at the USA, it's two worlds apart. In Zimbabwe, I don't think you can say something and go home and sleep well. I think that's where I see a big difference.
So looking at the press freedom in USA, compared to Zimbabwe, how would you contrast the two?
I think it's pretty much oil and water. I think I would support that by saying in the US, people can say whatever they want. You can even insult the president and there's nothing that happens to you. People are allowed, to say their opinions, to view, say their opinions and without any negative impact. But in Zimbabwe, I think we normally see that when people speak, they are free to speak, but I'm not sure if they'll be okay after speaking.
Now, looking at this issue concerning any citizen being a journalist in terms of, these days we've got WhatsApp, we've got Twitter, we've got Instagram, and all these social media platforms. So are you one of the journalists in quotations, who is distributing news to anybody at any time with some kind of verification in the process or without verification?
I think I'm guilty for some of these things, especially on Twitter. And I think sometimes just liking something or retweeting something, if it's Facebook, when you like something, other people see what you like. So yes, if you don't verify some of these issues, we get caught up. We can be accused of actually promoting things that are true. Because if I like something on Facebook and my friends that I like something, they read it, it might turn out to be false. But I think that's what we have to deal with during the time of social media. I think every government should not consider social media as an authoritative source of journalism. I think the journalists like you and many others, we have credentials. Some of us, we are not journalists. We just like things. They may turn out to be true, they may turn out to be false, but we don't consider ourselves as journalists at all.
Yes, Marvelous. We have Mr. Ntini here. Go ahead.
aiwapo tiri kunzwa kubva kuna vantini vari kutaura ivo kuti ichokwadi vazhinji mazuva ano fanike pamadande mutande ipa pakadai sana Facebook nekutwitter ukaonekwa iwe uchifarira zvimwe zvinhu zvinenge zvanyorwa nevamwewo kunyange zviri zvekunyepa vanhu vanobva vaziva zvaunofarirawo asi vari kutaura ivo kuti kumusha kana kuti kuzimbabwe kwakati siyanei nekunoku nekuti kuno kuamerica kana munhu ari journalist akawanikwa iwo achibvunzurudza president zvataiona nyanya panguva yavaDonald Trump anogona kuenda kumba onorara asina kutya kuti achauya achizotorwa nemapurisa. Asi zvakadai tikazoona zvichiitika muZimbabwe tinogona kuona kuti vatori venhau vanogona kushungurudzwa nemibvunzo kana manyorero avanenge vaita zvatingati zvenhau dzavanenge vatora nyanya vachinyora zvinhu zvakadai sezvinoita nechekuita nehurumende. Saka vanga vari kutaura ivo kuti dande mutande zvechokwadi rakanganisa iya yatingati kutorwa kwenhau kwechokwadi nekuti mumwe anongogona kuenda kutwitter ononyorawo zvake zvaanofunga obva awanikwa iye achitumidzira vanhu vakawanda voita retweet zvigoenda zvakadaro pasina kunyatsozikanwa kuti zvanyorwa izvi zviri balanced here ndezvechokwadi here zvinofolowa journalistic ethics here. Saka vari kuti ichokwadi ndo zviri kuitikawo mazuva ano zvavari kuona nyanya.
Yeah, so ngasikangele baba Ntini konokukhuluma ukuthi lawe uyakubona surithita ezinye izinto kuba sipa kuphosela. So kodwa konke lokutshoni kuthi ukuthi sokule press freedom emhlabeni wonke jikelele ngoba lawe phela ungazuza information oyifunayo pho emphakathini. So kule press freedom kumbe press freedom kathesi isihlakazwa ngabantu.
I-press freedom ayisafanele yakudala ngoba there's all the new sources of information. So esikhathi ukuqinisa ukuthi kunengi okungamanga okukhona. Lokhu ngakufananisa lokhu baba Dube. I think ukuthi isikhuluma ama-journalist lapha. Ake sifake nama-politicians lama-propaganda abasitshelayo. Ama-politician akhuluma amanga every day. We can even talk about President Biden or Trump. We realize ukuthi when they get fact-checked, like Biden, for instance, within his first 100 days, his business will produce 25, I believe. Trump, where 200 and something within 100 days. So these things, I think, let's not concentrate only on our journalists. Let's also look at our politicians. I guess one year Lavo Chinamasa during our ZANU-PF press conference. Bekhuluma amanga kanti bona indawo bengakutsho ukuthi asingakhaleli ukuthi abantu ngama-private citizen kumbe ngama-journalist. Let us apply umthetho even la kuma-politicians bona uyahamba njani.
Uhamba njani? Ngokubona kwakho ubona ukuthi uhamba njani kwenziwa njalo?
Bengaphelele emajele wonke ama-politicians.
Ngoba bakhanya beqamba amanga.
Antsho bona bathi propaganda ngoba ama-politician uyakhangela umuntu nxa kuzanu kumbe i-MDC kulesikhathi akhuluma for iphathi yakhe kube lesikhathi akhulumela i-government. Ungakhangela umuntu onjengabo abe-ZANU-PF iphathi nxa bekhuluma for iphathi batsho ama-propaganda, but nxa sebekhulumela i-state bazazama ukukhuluma iqiniso. njalo ungakhangela kuma-opposition party nxa umuntu ezikhulumela for i-party lo muntu okhuluma e-under oath ngabe kuparliament kulomehluko. So esikhathi bona bale-propaganda nxa bekhuluma ngama-parties abo lathi kumele ama-private citizen basekele sikhuluma intando zethu. Yebo nxa into ingathena ukuthi ingamanga sidlulele phambili. Ama-journalists, I think they should be afforded the opportunity ukuthi retract i-story nxa ukuthi i-journalist itwithe into engasiloqiniso.
Njengokukhuluma kwakho khonapho-ke sicela ufake sikhiwa ngamafishane.
What I was saying is the fact that I think we should not only look at the journalists and also the private citizens alone. Let us also look at the politicians. We do see politicians speaking for their parties using propaganda, and those propaganda is nothing but lies that they say. So, when they double between representing their own party, they say one thing using propaganda, but when they're under oath, that's where they'll tend to tell something that is true. Even under oath, they keep telling lies. So I think let's not only concentrate on the journalists and also the private citizens. Let us apply the rule to everyone. And if we do that, I think 99% of the politicians will go to jail.
Marvelous.
I liked the comparison you gave between the president of the United States, Joe Biden, and Mr. Donald Trump, the former president. Can you just tell us that in English? Because that's a very interesting fact.
Yeah, what I was saying is the journalists, in this case, they are only giving edge. Donald Trump and President Biden. President Biden was found to have said more than 25, I don't want to say lies, but we'll leave it at that.
Fact.
Yeah, unchecked or unsupported facts.
Okay.
Whereas during the same 100 days, Donald Trump told more than 250 unverified truths. So
that's a better way of putting it. Vari kutaura ivo pamusoro vachiti ivo zvakakosha kuti tisangotarise chete mabasa ari kuitwa nevatapi venhau, asi tiwaniko tichitarisa kuti ko ivo vatungamiri uye vemapato, vatungamiri vehurumende. Oh, you can go ahead.
Yes, Ndini, go ahead, Ndini.
Oh, no, I'm on mute. I'm not talking right now.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, apo sorry, tanga tiri kuedza kugadzirisa iko kuno tatanzwa kunge vantini vanga vari kutaura asi vati havasi. Saka vanga vataura ivo kuti zvakakosha kuti nyanya vatungamiri vemapato ari kutonga kana anopikisa uyezve vatungamiri vehurumende vanofanirwa kungewo vachitariswawo kuti ivo nhau dzavari kupa vatori venhau ndedzechokwadi here kana kuti kwete. Nekuti vari kutaura ivo kuti takambotarisa zviri kuitika imo muno muamerica, muno vanoiti inonzi fact checked, vakati pakaitwa ipo comparison yekuona kuti pautongi hwavaJoe Biden first 100 days pane here zvavakataura zvakawanikwa zvichiongororwa zvikaonekwa zvisina kunyatsoti tsvikiti. Vakati zviripo zvinhu 25. Vakati pasi pavaDonald Trump panguva iyoyi yefirst 100 days vakange vanewo zvavanga vataura zvanga zvisina kunyatsowanikwa umbowo zvinosvika izvo 200. Saka ndo zvavari kuedza kutsanangudza kuti zvakakosha kuti vamwewo vanoita mabasa eutungamiri, nokuti tinoona kunonzi kuine propaganda nyanya kune vanoita zvematongerwo enyika. Saka vari kuti izvi zvinenge zvichida kuti zvigadziriswe kuitira kuti nhaurwa dzinozobuda dzibude dziri dzechokwadi uyezve dzisina kwadzakarerekera. Gibbs.
Yeah, so Mr. Ntini, what's your real, or let me say, your imagined press freedom exactly? What does it entail,
I think in the new age of social media, we should all be free to say whatever we want. Each government should come up with their own ways of, disseminating their own information to counter anything that is not true out there. because I think propaganda is going both ways, from the governments, from the CSOs, the trade unions, the opposition, even the citizens. We have our own propaganda. But largely, we have propaganda coming from citizens because our governments are not giving us all the information that we need. Let's talk about the issue of COVID-19 and the vaccines. There were many speculations, many conspiracy theories because the government wasn't giving us the right information. And also, many people were speaking on behalf of the government. You find that there were many people coming into this show telling us conflicting issues. And 2 days later, it turns out it wasn't true. So there was a lot of misinformation coming from the party, which resulted in us as citizens also doing our own research and saying our mind. But at the end of the day, I think we need to be free to say what we need to say without any issues after we have spoken.
Yeah, ngicela ufake isindebele khona kuba.
Ebengikutsho ukuthi I think kuqakathekile ukuthi abantu bebe lelungelo lokukhuluma kumbe kuyini abafuna ukukhuluma ungalahlupho. Akumelanga ukuthi uthini ube ku VOA siyatshona edingwa. Siyake sibone ku Facebook lapha dube siqeda ukukhuluma uyathola usuthunyelwa ama Facebook requests nabantu ongabaziyo ungobani. So into ezenzakalayo lezi esikufisayo ukuthi bani government yethu iyasipha yonke information esiyifunayo, singakhali indaba ye-COVID-19 lama vaccine ayekhona. Kwaba lesikhathi abantu be-government abayobuya lapha besipha information eyehlukeneyo, lathi njengama private citizens agcina senze yethu research. Thina abanye silabangani abavele eChina abasitshela ngemithi le ukuthi vele uhamba njani. So kwesinye isikhathi i-government nxa ingasiphi information eyiyo, thina sizahamba sedinga information. But thina sifuna ama-journalist engxenye kube yiyo ahambayo kulabo Hopewell siyazi uhlupho lwabo, sijale ukulalela bona kakhulu ngoba siyabathemba ukuthi bayaverify ama-facts abo. But thina as ama-private citizen sihamba ku-internet, silabangani abasemazweni amaningi, sahamba ngalokho esikuzwayo ebantwini.
Yeah, so having problems, like Hopewell, he was in and out of, remand prison. So at the end of the day, is there a way that governments can actually avoid that kind of a thing?
Yes, there is. I think the government, they should investigate before they arrest or persecute. Let's look at case of Hopewell, the very last case, where he was accused of tweeting about the baby being beaten up. We had that discussion here on the show. Yes, on real information, video. Hopewell, I think he spent, I can't remember that time around, whether it was like 20-some days or even more. Then now it turns out it was all lies, that he even tweeted or retweeted that information. So I think it's important for the government to investigate before they arrest, and definitely before they persecute someone.
Yeah, put that thing as in the
maybe let's just do a little bit of Shona.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Said apo tanga tiri kunzwa vantini vachitaura ivo vachiti panguva ino yepress freedom day tinoona kuti zvakanyanya zvavari kuona zvichiitika ndezvekuti dai hurumende ichitanga iyo yamboongorora. Vataura ivo panyaya yemutori wenhau Hopewell Chimwono, vachitaura kuti ndo vamwe vanhu vatakaona panguva yapfuura vachiwanikwa ivo vachimbunyikidzwa kodzero dzavo, vachisungwa, vachikandwa muchiturongo, vozoudzwa ivo vapedza mazuva akati vari mujeri kuti hapana nyaya. Saka vari kuti ivo zvakakosha dai hurumende ichitanga yaferefeta nyaya isati yasunga vatori venhau pane zvavanenge vakwanisa kunge vachivati vakanganisa. Nekuti apo takaona Hopewell achinzi akanga awanikwa achishandisa dandemutande reTwitter kuti awanikwe iye achifambisa nyaya yemumwe mwana ainzi akange arohwa nemapurisa. Saka vari kuedza kuti ivo pari zvino zvakakosha kuti tisazowane vamwe vatori venhau zvakare vachiwanikwa vachisungwa panyaya dzakadai seyakaitwa naHopewell Chimwono yakazowanikwa ichiraswa. Gibbs.
Yeah, poselo kucina ngonapo babonje.
Unyesaka kutsho babaduwe ukuthi hantsho vele la kudala wakulomthunywa into othi umthunywa iqamba amanga ayitshela izitori ezingaqedakaliyo bake ngabotshwa abakamthunywa. So even today, if a journalist is or tells somebody is not true, give them the opportunity to retract what they said. They shouldn't be persecuted for such things.
Thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of the show today. We wish to thank our guests this evening, Mr. Busani Musontini. He lives here in USA. Mr. John Masugu, who is a veteran broadcaster based in Zimbabwe, and Mr. Kurawone. I think Marvelous will say that about him. She knows him a lot. So signing off
Yes,
from Washington, this is Kip Stube.
tinotenda kune vanga vari pano vachititsigira. Tinotenda vagodfrey Kurawone avo vanova ivo veMDC Alliance, uyezve vakange variwanikwa ivo vari mukanzura kumasvingo, asi pari zvino vari muNew York. Saka tinovatenda kunge vanga vachiuya pano, uyezve takaona munguva yapfuura vachimbosungwawo vakatora nguva yakareba chaizvo vari muchitirongo ikoko kumasvingo, vachinzi ivo vanga vakurudzira vanhu kuti varatidzire nezvimwe muguta irori. Saka tinovatenda kunge vanga vari pano. Totenda zvakare kunemi vari kuona musazokangana kuti ino program i-pre-recorded program, saka pamuchanzwa mamwe mafigures atinenge takupai eCovid-19 anogona kunge achinja panguva yamuchaona program. I'm Marvelous Mhlanganya in Washington DC saying let's meet again tomorrow on Let's Talk. Ngati kurukurei.
Good night.